Hi there, Tom Jeffries, the YouTube channel for HowStreet.com. Good to have you with us. We're at the beautiful Fairmont Hotel, Vancouver, the 10th annual Agora Wealth Symposium. This year's theme is called A Decade of Reckoning. Joining us now, one of the gentlemen that is very kind to allow us to reprint some of his articles on HowStreet.com, Mr. Rob Parenteau, from the new Richebacher letter from Agora Publishing. Good to have you in Vancouver, Rob.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Good to have you here. For people that don't know, who is Dr. Kurt Richebacher?
Kurt was an independent thinker who was trained in London in the late 30s, so he had some influence from the whole early Keynes revolution that went on back then. But he was also influenced by the Austrian thinkers, so Gottfried Haberler and other people like that were his contemporaries. He's an odd mix in that way because he's gone back to the early ways of thinking about credit and business cycles, and that's been, for the most part, lost or pushed off to the side in much of modern macroeconomics. So he went back to the original work that was done in this area by the Austrians, by Keynes and some of his acolytes, and he reconstructed a way of thinking about the world that involves the importance of credit, the importance of money and its relationship to credit, and how financial flows, financial asset prices can also have an influence on the economy. And as he did that, he found a few other clues along the way. There was a man named Minsky who did a lot of work in the United States looking at this whole issue of how finance and the real economy integrate and why it matters what goes on in financial markets. And Minsky was early on in calling a lot of the types of financial instability that we were later to see develop in the economy. So Kurt was a contemporary of his. He picked up a lot of interesting clues from him, and Kurt's strength was his ability to understand the dynamics well enough that he could see where the train wreck was going to come from. And he could identify it enough ahead of time that if you were an investor or you were a businessman and you needed to get out of the way, you could understand why you needed to get out of the way and how you could get out of the way. So I think of him as an applied economist who was willing to think independently, stitch different kinds of schools together, taking their best insights, and not afraid to go against the grain of conventional wisdom. In fact, he considered that a badge of courage, if you will.
Good. How close do you think in your heart of hearts did we come to a Minsky moment, a total crash, a total meltdown back in November, Rob?
Minsky talked about more than a moment. Minsky had a whole process involved, and I think the meltdown was tangibly close. I think it was as close as we've ever been in the post-war period. And when I think about it, and I look back through the last 50 years or so, I can think of no other time when we were closer to the types of debt deflation dynamics that were in play in the 1930s. And once you let those things get any kind of traction inside of an economy, they can really take on a life of their own. So post the September events when Lehman went bankrupt, I think we were awfully close. There was a lot in motion. And when I look at the economic statistics that were available back then, I can see the decline in income, and I can see the decline in debt issuance that you normally get when you're starting to go down the toilet bowl. And that was as close as I think we've ever been, certainly in my lifetime.
Talking about, you're a lot younger than I am, but when I went to university back in the 60s, I didn't hear a word about Austrian economics. It was all supply side, it was all Keynes, Keynes, Keynes. Where was the Austrian school when we needed it?
They were there if you went hunting for them, but you had to go hunting for them.
Right.
And they're not easy to find. Actually, if you look at a lot of the work that Keynes did, it's a conversation or a dispute or a debate with the Austrians, all the way into the general theory. And there's a book he wrote before the general theory, the Treatise on Money, which has many parallels with Austrian thinking. We forget all about this. So I think, unfortunately, what we had was this so-called neoclassical synthesis that took over in the 1940s and 50s. It was like an engineering diagram of the economy, and finance came completely out of the picture. It was pushed to the side. And yet we know finance and credit and money are crucial determinants of economic outcomes. We've lived through enough times to figure that out. Theory has yet to quite catch up with that. But people like Kurt were willing to go off into the outskirts, find these schools that had dealt with this, thought about it, and bring what he could out of it.
I get at a verbal joust with my friends because I've adopted a lot of Austrian school into my thought process, and a lot of people just don't want to hear this. They want to hear about the fact, for instance, here in Vancouver, all of a sudden real estate selling again, Rob. People are saying interest rates are historically low, time to get back into real estate, time to get back into hard assets, deflation, bah. What do you say?
The thing that's different this time is we have a balance sheet recession. It's not your garden variety recession. If it was a garden variety recession, then all those recommendations could make sense. But what we have to understand here is people's balance sheets have been clobbered.
Right.
The asset side of their balance sheets have been clobbered. Their net worth has shrunk. And now they're sitting here and facing a situation where their collateral value is lower than they thought it was before. So the bank looks at them and says, what's your net worth? And some of these folks, especially in the state that I come from, have mortgages where the mortgage value is higher than the home value. They're upside down on the mortgage.
Right.
They're not going to be borrowing anytime soon. So we've taken a whole class of consumers and actually some businesses as well, and they're shut out. They're locked out from the credit markets. They won't be coming back on soon. And then there's another slug that wants to pay down debt. They understand now the danger of debt, and they're saving money and they're paying down debt. So in that type of a situation, it's very hard to get banks lending again. They don't want to. And it's very hard to get households and firms borrowing again. They don't want to. They're busy trying to clean up their balance sheets. That creates a hangover effect, like we saw in Japan, that can last for a very long time. Because what happens when households and businesses try to deleverage? They're saving money out of income flows. They're trying to pay down debt with that savings. They're not spending it on produced goods and services. So you interrupt the normal recovery flow that you get. The only reason why we've got any kind of signs of recovery now is the full-blown policy push that we've seen from fiscal and monetary side. Something we've never seen in our lifetimes on a completely different order.
Yeah.
And this is like two tidal waves or two tsunami waves coming together in the middle of the ocean. They have slapped together, and it looks like the policy is getting a little bit of traction, but that opposing force of debt deflation is not going to go away immediately. Certainly the Japanese experience gives us plenty of information about how that works. It's a balance sheet recession, not garden variety.
You know what scares me, though, just let me interrupt for a second. I, as an investor, you as an investor, we as homeowners, family members, et cetera, we're sort of forced to speculate now because if we have cash, GIC, you just said we get 0.25.
Right.
So they're saying to us, okay, either you got to buy real estate, hard assets, or you've got to start speculating again. And some of the speculation, you and I both know, Rob, has been bananas for the last 10 years. Are we being forced down a road as basic citizens where perhaps we don't want to go?
The whole point of the zero interest rate policy and the quantitative easing policy, which are the two ways that they've come at this problem, I would argue, was to spoil or trash the yield on cash and force investors to go out and go further on the risk limb and into riskier assets in order to pick up the yields that they need for their retirement or for other purposes that they're saving money for. So what we've seen here is a full court press by the central bank to force private investors to go into higher yielding instruments, which are usually riskier instruments, things like corporate bonds.
Oh boy.
So I believe this is part of what central banks try to do in terms of expectations management. You take away the yield on safe instruments, you force people into riskier instruments, and you hope to get some traction in that trade so that corporate bond yields come down, corporate interest costs come down, equity prices go up, and thereby repairing some of the balance sheet damage done on the household side. But you're right, it's a very Machiavellian type of bargain that they brought to the table here.
No, it's been a real pleasure finally meeting you, Rob, having you in Vancouver. Rob Parenteau has been our guest here at HowStreet.com. I encourage you to drop over. Just go over to agorafinancial.com or dailyreckoning.com, and you'll see a huge list of wonderful publications, including Mr. Parenteau's new publication, backing about Dr. Richebacher, one of the great economists of our time and a great mentor of Addison Wiggins and Mr. Bonners. As again, a pleasure to have you in Vancouver.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
for all your writings on How Street. We'll look forward to seeing you next year.
Good luck to you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rob Parenteau, on behalf of Mr. Parenteau here at the beautiful Hotel Vancouver, I'm Tom Jeffries at HowStreet.com's YouTube channel. Thank you for your time and have a great day.
Comments made on How Street Video and HowStreet.com are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at HowStreet.com. How Street Video is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.